Justin drove 43.5 miles to work. How many yards did he drive? So there's more than one way to solve this problem, but I'm going to model solving it using unit rates. The first thing I'm going to do is pay attention to the units that I see in the problem. So I see 43.5 miles, and then I see that I need to answer in yards. So let me look over at my formulas that I've been provided, and I'm looking for one that equates miles in yards, right? So the very first one says that 1 mile is equal to 1,760 yards. That's great, just what I needed. So let me start by writing down what I have. I know I have 43.5 miles. I'm going to abbreviate that with MI. And I want it in yards, right? So I'm going to write a unit rate. And right now, imagine that this whole number is a fraction. We could write it as a fraction if we wanted, couldn't we? We just have a 1 in the denominator. So 43.5, the miles is in my numerator, right? What I want is yards. And so I am going to put miles in my denominator when I write my unit rate. So I'm going to have 1,760 yards in my numerator, and I'm going to have 1 mile in my denominator, right? Because I know that 1 mile is equal to 1,760 yards. Now you might be wondering, why is miles in the numerator on the left and in the denominator on the right? Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to multiply these two fractions, these two ratios together. And what I can do now that I couldn't do before is I can simplify my units. So I have miles divided by miles. So my miles are essentially simplified out, and what I have now is just yards. So what's left is yards, and that's what I wanted. So this is called unit analysis, right? All right, so what I have left now, let's take a look at the numbers. I have 43.5 in my numerator times 1,760 in my numerator. So I'm going to need to multiply those together times 1,760. And then in my denominator, I just have 1 times 1. That's going to be 1, right? I don't really even need to write that. I know it's going to be 1. And what unit of measurement will I have here? I will have yards, which is what I wanted. So now I'm going to need to take some time to multiply these numbers together. Let me get a little more space. I am going to multiply 1,000, hang on, need a little more. 1,760 times 43.5. I changed my 43.5 to 43.5. That's going to be easier here for me to multiply. I think 43.5 as a decimal is the easier way to go. But you could do it either way, right? All right, let's multiply. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 7 is 35. 35 plus 3 is 38. 5 times 1 is 5, and 5 plus 3 is 8. All right, let's go down a row. I'm going to write a 0 here because I'm multiplying my ones now. Okay, and then so now 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 7 is 21, and 21 plus 1 is 22. 3 times 1 is 5, and 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 plus 2 is 5. I got ahead of myself, didn't I? So there we go. 52800 on that next row. Whoop, there we go. All right, now I'm going to write 2 zeros because we're coming over to our tens place. I'm going to multiply 4 times 0 is 0. I'm going to write 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 7 is 28, and 28 plus 2 is 30. And then 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. There we go. All right, so now everything is ready to add. Let's add it up. 0, 0, 16. Let's see if I can get this to right. There we go. There's my 6. Let's see, 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11. 11 plus 4 is 15. There's more than one way that you could have added those numbers, though. There we go. And then 1 plus 5 is 6, and nothing plus 7 is 7. Okay, so where does my decimal go? Let's talk about this. I have one number here behind the decimal place in my factors, which means I'm going to have one number behind the decimal place in my product. So my decimal goes right here between these two zeros. There we go. So my answer then is 76,560 yards. Let's write that down. 76,560 yards. a good practice here really would have been to estimate what that might have been before getting started. So for example, if I was going to estimate that, I could multiply, for example, 40 times 1,800. Let's try that. I'm going to round this one up and the other one down. So I'm going to do 1,800 times 40, and then just multiply that out. And I'm just estimating here. So my estimate, I rounded 1,760 up to 1,800. I rounded 43.5 down to 40, and that was just easier to multiply out. My estimate was 72,000, right? And I knew it was going to be a little bit on the small side, but that's still pretty close, right? That at least is good enough to tell me where my decimal needs to go in my product. All right, so and 76,560 yards is the correct answer. Let's take a minute to pause really quickly here. And what I would like you to do is read the next question. So I want you to read number 2. And I want you to think about I want you to find the 2 types of units that we're comparing here. So in the previous question, we measured miles and yards. In this question, what 2 types of units are we looking at? All right, I'm going to underline them. Tinsley drinks 4.5 gallons of milk. How many cups of milk does she drink each month? Our next step is going to be to go over and look at our formulas. I see gallons here, and I see cups there, but in order to get from gallons to cups, I'm going to need to use these 3 formulas right there. I need all 3. Okay, so I'm going to start by writing down what I have. I have 4.5 gallons of milk, right? There's my 4.5. I'm just going to use G. 4.5 gallons, that's going to be G. And then that's going to be my numerator for my first ratio. I want to multiply it by a ratio, a unit rate that has gallons in the denominator. So looking at this first formula, I know that 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon. So that means my quarts are going to be in my numerator, and my gallon is going to be in the denominator. If I wanted, I could also put a 1 underneath this first one, right? So 4.5 gallons over 1. All right, it's a little bit hard to tell that this is a Q and not a G. So let me actually just go ahead and write out quarts. So 4 quarts. Okay, but this gets me to quarts, but I don't want quarts. I want cups. So I've got to keep going. So now I have quarts in my numerator. I need a unit rate that has quarts in the denominator. So let's see, we've already used this one. Next I have 1 quart is equal to 2 pints. So that means 2 pints will go in my numerator. I'm going to abbreviate it, PT. And then that's equal to 1 quart. So 2 pints is 1 quart. All right, so now I've got, let me write those units consistently. I wrote out the whole word there, so I'm going to write it there. All right, so now I'm over to pints. I've already done pints, right? We've done this one, but remember, we don't want pints, we want cups. So I'm going to go to this last formula that I've highlighted. 1 pint is equal to 2 cups. I have pints in my numerator, 2 pints. I need pints in my denominator. So I'm going to have 2 cups over 1 pint. There we go. All right, so now let's take a look at our units. And what I want to point out before I even start simplifying at all is that 4 quarts over 1 gallon is a fancy way of writing 1. This is a 1. 2 pints over 1 quart. Well, 2 pints is equivalent to 1 quart. So this is a fancy 1. And 2 cups is equivalent to 1 pint. So this is also a fancy 1. I'm not changing the value of what I started with. I'm just multiplying by 1 3 times. They're just fancy ones that help me find this value in cups instead of gallons. So let me get rid of all that. We know that those are 1s, so we're ready to go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and simplify my units. Here I have grams over grams. Let's change the color. Here I have quarts over quarts. Change the color. Here I have pints over pints. So then what am I left with? I am left with cups, which is what I wanted. So my units are the way I want them to be. And let's look at the numerators and denominators. Well, in the numerator, I'm multiplying 4.5 times 4 times 2 times 2. And the denominator, I'm just multiplying 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. So I don't even really need to write that down. I really just need to multiply 4.5 times 4 times 2 times 2. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to do it, let's see. I think I'm going to do these first. I find that easier. 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. There's more than one way to multiply those as well. I could have done 2 times 2, that was 4. And I could have done 4 times 4 is 16. So 4 times 2 times 2 is 16. So then what I need to do is multiply 4.5 times 16. I'm just going to do that on the side over here. 16 times 4.5. I don't know if you can see that too well. When I multiplied 16 times 4.5, I got 720. And when I'm thinking about where my decimal goes, I have one value behind the decimal in my factor. So I should have one number behind the decimal in my product. So this should be 72. Hopefully you can read that. That says 72. And 72 what? 72 cups. So let's write that down. 72 cups. 4.5 times 4 times 2 times 2 is 72. All right, y'all, you have been watching me do this a lot. In the last question, I asked you to find the units that we were comparing. This time, I want you to find the units that we're comparing, and I want you to highlight the formula that we need. We only need one formula this time. So pause the video, and your job is to highlight the units and determine which formula we need. Pause. Okay, you've hit play on the video, which means you must have highlighted the units and determined which of those formulas that we need. So let's see, the units we're comparing are millimeters and centimeters, which means the formula that we need, millimeters and centimeters, is right there. And we're only gonna need one this time because we can go directly from centimeters to millimeters. So let's not write down what we have. We have 230 millimeters, and I'm using the abbreviation 2 for millimeter. I need a unit rate that has millimeters in the denominator. So I know from my rate down here that 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. And again, if I wanted, I could put a 1 down here. Well, let's analyze our units now. I see I have millimeters here and there, so I can simplify that. And now I believe we're ready to just multiply across. We are going to end up with what we want, centimeters. So let's multiply across. 230 times 1 is 230. And the denominator, 1 times 10, is 10. So that means I'm left now with 230 over 10, or 230 divided by 10. 230 divided by 10 is 23. So this is 23 centimeters. If you don't believe me, let's just try it really quick. 230 divided by 10. 10 goes into 23 2 times. And 10 goes into 30 3 times. So 23 times 10 is 230. All right, there's one more problem here to look at in this micro lesson. This time I want you to give it a try. Give it a try here. Try the problem. We're going to pause the video. We're going to pause it for about 4 minutes, something like that. And I want you to try to do this one on your own. So pause and hit play when you're ready to talk about it. All right, you hit play, so you must be ready to go over it. All right, 4.1 kilograms. And we want to know how many grams her cat weighs. So we need kilograms to grams. There it is. We just need one formula. Let's write down 4.1. I'm going to abbreviate kilograms with a kg. And then I need kilograms in my denominator. I'm going to have 1 kilogram in my denominator, which is equal to 1,000 grams. There we go. And it might be helpful to write the 1 as the denominator of that first ratio as well. So looking at our units, we're simplifying. We have kilograms in the numerator and denominator, so we can simplify those. So then what unit will we be left with? Grams. And that's what we want. Let's multiply across. We have 4.1 times 1,000. And in the bottom, in our denominator, we have 1 times 1, which is just 1. I know that 4.1 times 1,000 is equal to 4,100, but let's just try it out in the side over here, just in case. There we go. So there, I'm ready to add my numbers. All right, and remember I had one value behind the decimal in my factors, so I'll have one value behind the decimal in my product. There we go, 4,100, which is what we said it would be. So 4,100 grams. What I want you to remember about using the unit rate method to convert measurements is that all we're really doing is multiplying by fancy ones. So on problem number 1, 1,600 yards is equal to 1 mile. So this is a fancy 1. On problem number 2, each of these we talked about are just fancy ones. We're multiplying by 1 3 times. That one looked like a 7. There we go, 1, 1, 1. On problem number 3, 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. So this is also a 1. And that's how unit rate conversions work. I think you guys did a great job doing this, and now you're going to be ready to look at some practice problems.